Hey, DisThunder here. I'm back with you today to take a look at the Mezco 112 Collective Green Ranger figure, which is one of several exclusives from San Diego Comic-Con 2023. Mr. Tommy the Green Ranger here is going to serve as our inaugural figure in a 112 Collective subset of sorts, which will be the, of course, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers line, which will include the 5 main core rangers and also a white ranger, presumably later this year. So that means Tommy can serve as a sneak preview of sorts, and if that is the case, this is going to be an excellent little subline, and I'm glad I pre-ordered the box set. It may not be unusual, perhaps maybe uncommon, for me to get to review a figure of a person who exists, or sadly existed in real life, but it is exceedingly rare for me to get to review a figure of a person who I've actually met. So that strangely kind of weighs on me as I do this review. I'm going to try to do my best to stick to the core parts of the figure review, but also, if you'll indulge me, take a little bit of time and tribute of sorts to Jason David Frank. So I actually got to meet Jason twice. First time I think was at, definitely at a convention. It could have been Denver. Kind of hard to remember. They all blend together. But I definitely saw him most recently when he came here local to help a friend of mine open his toy shop, which was very cool. Like most interactions you have at shows and conventions, it was brief. We had a chance to talk a little bit about MMA and fighting, but more importantly, I got to see him interact with his fans. And it seemed to me that it didn't matter that it had been nearly 20 years since his first role in Power Rangers. He was gracious and grateful and seemed to be just a genuinely likable, nice guy, which is why it's obviously such a shame that he's no longer with us. So while a toy review might be an odd place to say it, it was a pleasure to meet you, sir. I'm glad I got the chance. So with that said, and thank you for letting me say my piece, let's talk about the articulation on the figure. Let's start with the head that is on a double ball joint. There is a ball at the top of the neck joint, and then there's one that sets into the collarbone. His armor piece does limit the lower joint a little bit, but you've got a solid range of motion without it. Here you can see the interior of it. It's actually kind of a recessed ball socket, which helps with the proportions and the helmet look of that head. I think it does a nice job there. I guess I should have started by fixing his arm bracer that I let slide down. Obviously those are free floating, so you can move them in and out of the way as you need to. And his dragon armor is also removable. This tab is hidden here on the right side. And that is beneficial because it does limit his shoulder articulation a significant amount, as you would expect just by its design. But I think it looks great, so I don't have any intentions of doing so here. As you can see, we have a double jointed elbow, a ball joint wrist as is standard. There is a double torso joint. Again, the dragon armor is going to limit your forward, but back range is just short of excellent, really. You've got the usual amount of twist at the waist, but more in the upper torso, and there is a ball jointed set of hips with an excellent range forward. Not quite as far as some of the other figures of his stature, but still respectable, and a double jointed knee bend. For the boots, we have an excellent little ankle swivel, which is good because I imagine we'll see that boot and glove sculpt reused on the rest of the figures. In fact, I imagine this entire body will be reused for most, obviously, the male characters, and I think that's going to be great. For size comparisons, I was actually a little surprised. He's actually a bit taller than I expected, and I think some of that is probably due to the dragon armor making his shoulders sit higher, or at least in appearance. But as you can see next to Supreme Knight Batman, he's obviously a lot slimmer than Batman, which makes perfect sense, and I think that looks like it scales just fine to me. I was actually surprised that he came out a little bit taller than my custom that used an old Space Ghost based. I actually figured he would be, if anything, smaller. Where I think this may be an issue is for folks who are trying to incorporate these Power Rangers into their existing collections, be that Lightning Collection and to a lesser degree Super 7. I'd actually meant to pick up the Rita Repulsa that Hasbro put out in the boxed edition that I think GameStop was carrying. Unfortunately, it did not make it here in time for the review, so presumably it would be this part of the review you would see Rita next to him. But I assume the scale on that will be fine. So for lightning scale in general, I'm going to use Outback here as a stand-in. Well, stand might be a strong word. He's doing this weird little jig thing with his leg out, so I'm just going to hold him here for a second. But if the lightning scale heads are similar to the classified heads, I think scale-wise, those, if nothing else, seem to match up nicely. So if you prefer the Hasbro Tommy head or something, you may be able to get away with that. No, I think the only real problem here is going to be somebody like Goldar here, where he is just undersized all the way around. I don't know if it's that dramatic with the Lightning Collection figures, but he just seems small to me in general. This has me considering picking up the Super 7 version because while it would be less articulated, obviously it'd probably be a little taller, and I bet it's probably better quality. This thing is just a fiddly, floppy mess these days. Let's switch gears and go over to accessories for a minute. From the top here we have the Dragon Dagger, the Mega Heater, the Blade Blaster, the Sword of Power, and the Sword of Darkness. While they're all fantastic, I suspect we'll see a couple of these in the box set as well. So the Dragon Dagger has an optional blade that you can put into the barrel of the blaster side, and it converts to blaster by just pulling down on the handle. Here's the Dragon Dagger with its blast effect attached, and here's a little closer look at it. You can see how excellent they did picking out those gold details. Here is the Mega Heater. I used one of the Blade Blaster effects just to put something in there for it. I think it looks like it works pretty good. I'm not familiar with this weapon, but I really like how it looks in hand. Here's the Blade Blaster using one of the smaller effects. Here's the Dragon Dagger with one of 2 lightning effects. I actually prefer these to the blast effect. I love the little kinetic feel they have to them. They come across really well. Here's the Sword of Power, which has a great matte finish to it with some little gold details. Let me get in focus there. This is probably my favorite of the 2 swords. Just got a striking look to it. But the Sword of Darkness is also very impressive with some nice inset sculpt detailing and just clean paint overall. It's a great looking sword. As I mentioned, we also have an unmasked Tommy Oliver head, and there's been a little bit of discussion on whether this is a good likeness or not. Some people don't like it. I think if you were to go back and look at some pictures of Jason in the 90s, especially when he's doing meet and greets and things like that, that little smile on his face, I think it's pretty accurate. I really like this head sculpt, actually. It's going to be hard to put the helmet on in the display. I suppose the real test will be how well this head sculpt lines up with his teammates, which hopefully we'll find out maybe later this year. So there we have it. Here is a look at Tommy Oliver, the Green Ranger, joining the 112 Collective. As you know, I generally like to do a little bit more history and a little more backstory on these reviews, and it just didn't feel appropriate, at least not right now, for this figure. But maybe when we do the box set, as I mentioned, we can do a little bit more of a pop culture deep dive, and I can talk about the cultural phenomena that Power Rangers was in the 90s. I was a little old for it, but I still got to witness it, and it was pretty fun to watch. But if you need a little bit of this nostalgia in your life, head on over to Mezco Toys. He is a convention exclusive, so that means you'll have to join the wait list and cross fingers. But I think the other Rangers are not exclusive, so you may still be able to get on those at the other usual sites. And with that, I'm going to call it. Thanks for watching, you guys. We'll talk again soon.